Hello and welcome to Small Cap Nation. I'm Jane King at the New York Stock Exchange, and with me today, Tom Equels, the CEO of Hemispherx Biopharma. So good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jane.
Now, we talked last year, you had just become CEO of the company, and I know you were making some big changes, trying to get the company, get it back on track. So take me back there. What were some of those changes you want implemented, and then we'll move forward to today?
Well, we initiated a policy of stronger financial responsibility, cutting our burn rate by more than half. In conjunction with that, we prioritized getting Ampligen approval for ME/CFS, that's known here in the United States as chronic fatigue syndrome, in whatever venues possible. We were extremely excited and appreciated when the Republic of Argentina approved Ampligen as the first ever therapy recognized in the world for this dread disease. If you understand the nature of ME/CFS, in the United States, for example, you have the CDC's estimated 1 million people have the serious form of the disease. We were approved for severe ME/CFS in Argentina. We estimate that there's probably as many as 200,000 people in the United States afflicted with the severe form of the disease, which is completely disabling. These people go from productive jobs to being unable to work, in many instances unable to care for themselves even in their own home.
Where is it in the process of U.S. approval?
We are the only late-stage drug in the pipeline for approval in the United States. So it's currently before the FDA in a new drug application. We're working on negotiation for confirmatory activity subsequent to our phase 3 clinical trial. We have a complete response letter from the FDA requiring additional confirmatory work, and we're trying to negotiate a protocol for that and a mechanism for approval.
Okay. Now, we have a new president who has talked about streamlining the process of approval of drugs. Would that impact your company, in particular this treatment?
Well, I think as I understood what President Trump said in his pronouncement on the biotech industry, pharma industry, and the FDA, he indicated in those instances where there are unmet medical needs for serious illnesses that he wanted to clear the decks and come up with an expedited approval process so that drugs were safe and they could help some part of that patient population. They would be given expedited approval. You know, that same thing applies in a certain sense with chronic fatigue syndrome. These people who are bedridden, you know, they're left in what's called, the patients call it a brain fog, but it's almost complete cognitive dysfunction. They're light sensitive. They can't get out of bed to care for themselves to the point of even showering or, you know, going to the kitchen to feed themselves. They require a caregiver. So they're essentially disabled, and it's like being paralyzed in a bed with the lights out. Unable to process thoughts even.
Right.
So can you imagine a worse scenario? So we want to give them, you know, hope that there's a therapy, and I think that's what the president is saying is that in these cases where it's an unmet medical need and people are in desperate need of a therapy, you know, he's going to figure out a way to clear the path.
And we've talked before about CFS and how these people have been active and involved and had thriving careers, and then they have this disease and it just completely changes their life.
Yes. In many instances, the victims of this disease have been, you know, very high energy, hard working, successful artisans, professionals, business people, tradesmen, and their life has been put into a shambles as a result of the disease. They go from being highly productive to totally disabled. Now, the chronic fatigue syndrome social costs are enormous in the United States of America.
Sure.
I believe the CDC estimated the social cost of chronic fatigue syndrome in the United States of America at $22 billion.
And when just from lost productivity and not going to work.
They're looking at all the costs.
Right,
you know, you've
right.
got the disability payments, you've got medical care, you've got lost productivity. CDC estimates in the United States 1 million people have a serious form of the disease.
Okay.
We're focusing on the severe form of the disease,
Okay.
the totally disabling form of the disease. We would estimate that that's 100,000 to 200,000 people.
Okay.
You know, there's no
Sure.
clear number there.
And the economic costs are huge too, associated with that. The
Yes,
peripheral.
it's a huge market for the drug once approved, but it's also, a huge social cost that becomes alleviated. You know, we have to have compassion for these people. You know, can you imagine what it would be like?
Oh my
You know,
gosh, yes.
you feel like you have the flu, but 2 weeks later you're in bed and you can't seem to get over it, and 3 months later, God forbid, you're unable to go to work. You can't even take care of your children. You know, what is it about that, that we don't understand, that it requires a priority be made to help these people? You know, it brings tears to my eyes when I see these people relegated to that condition. The reason we're the only drug in late stage in the pipeline is because we began this process during that period of time when there was not a consensus as to the disease.
And you will be a part of the NASDAQ event that Small Cap Nation is doing. So tell me about that. You're going to have a chance to tell your story at that event on February 21st.
Well, I think it's very important that the family offices and the investor groups that attend that event understand the potential at Hemispherx. You know, we are sitting here, on the verge of opening up a market for a disease that has vast implications. Got hundreds of thousands of people, worldwide with the most severe form of the disease. So let's just start there. You've got a course of treatment that costs tens of thousands of dollars. It's a 9-month course of treatment involving infusions twice a week. If you do the math, this is a very big market. And we're at a place right now where, our company's value is not getting credit for that market potential. And why should we get some credit for it? Is because if you look to the future, and this is something I believe, you look to the future, the key thing for us is you've got a disease that's now been determined to be a biological disorder. You've got a need for a therapy. It's a totally unmet medical need in the world. And we are the only late-stage drug in the pipeline that has any promise of being a therapeutic for that disease in the short term. So we have the potential to move into that market in a way where, just because of circumstance, we have no competition. Yeah. And additionally, in the United States, we have orphan drug status granted to us by the FDA. When they saw our initial safety and efficacy data, they gave us an orphan drug designation. That orphan drug designation means that if we get approval in the United States, we have a certain period of exclusivity. I believe it's 7 years.
Okay.
So all of these things are very, very meaningful in terms of the value of our intangible estate. Sure. And I think that's being overlooked, and if somebody thinks about it and calculates it, they'll see that this is an opportunity that could be very meaningful. But we've also made great strides in oncology. We're working very hard to follow up on our melanoma and renal cell carcinoma studies, where we got orphan drug designation from the FDA as well, showing that Ampligen can be both, has potential to be both a standalone therapy in certain lethal malignancies, as well as our work at the University of Pittsburgh is indicating it may have merit as a combination therapy in anti-cancer cocktails.
Okay. Lots of interesting things going on. So thank you for coming today, Tom, to tell the story, and I look forward to hearing more about it, especially at that event. So, and thank you as well for joining us, and for more interesting companies doing some interesting things and life-changing things, you can go to smallcapnation.com. I'm Jane King at the New York Stock Exchange. Have a great day.